Despite the barrage of new trailers, internet hype, and them finally changing the font from papyrus, I'm still wondering who asked for this movie. Hey y'all, Snarky J Cosplay here. As of the time of this video's recording, Avatar: The Way of Water is set to release this Friday, December 16th. This sequel is coming 13 years after the release of the first Avatar movie that is widely considered the greatest movie of all time. Not the greatest because it was so good, but because it actually broke and held pretty much every box office record ever. The only movie to come close to beating it that did sort of take that title for a minute was Avengers Endgame, and then once they re-released Avatar a couple years later, it regained the title of the highest grossing film of all time. It was also nominated for 7 different Oscars and won 3 of those, for Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, and Best Visual Effects. Still, we kind of have to ask ourselves, why exactly was Avatar such a huge deal? Most of the hype around Avatar is not about how good it was as a film, but mostly because in 2009, Avatar was actually a groundbreaking film in regards to visual effects. Back in 2009, it was sort of unheard of to use that much, if any, motion capture for a film. These days, mocap is basically old news to us. It's become the standard for hit video games like 2013's The Last of Us, 2018's Red Dead Redemption 2, and the new PS5 game God of War Ragnarok. But back in 2009, using mocap for a film was huge, especially when you consider just how much of it was used in the film. After all, the 2 main characters are 2 giant blue walking cat people, so the entire film basically is CGI based around mocap, which in turn has led to Avatar being considered the grandfather of mocap and great CGI in modern cinema. You can also thank the first Avatar film for bringing back 3D. The option of watching movies in 3D has kind of become commonplace, but back in 2009, people were already starting to look at it as a fad, and it seemed like it was sort of gonna die. IMAX was likely to stay, but 3D films were just sort of falling by the wayside, and it was Avatar's brilliant use of 3D and visual effects that drove the movie-going population to go, hey, you can't watch this if you don't watch it in 3D. You're not experiencing it. And so Avatar was basically transformed from a movie you may or may not go see to an experience that everybody had to have because it took over pop culture conversation for months. In all honesty though, if it hadn't been for those groundbreaking visual effects, Avatar would have just been another forgotten summer blockbuster. To this day, very few people actually remember the names of the main characters in the film. There were literally articles written about this. The plot of the movie is also a direct ripoff of Fern Gully, and it's got way heavier criticism on themes like colonialism and subtle messaging about protecting the environment. And by subtle, I mean they basically drop it on your head like an anvil in an old cartoon. That's not to say these messages aren't relevant, and especially in today's society, these messages are even more relevant than they were in 2009, and people are also looking more and more for these messages and things to be pushed in film today. The main point that I'm trying to make, though, is that plot-wise, Avatar is really nothing special. The only thing that really made Avatar the incredible box office win that it was were the special effects. They were groundbreaking, revolutionary, and the film looked like nothing anybody had ever seen back in 2009. But these effects are sort of commonplace right now. And that's what really leads me to wonder, what can we expect from this sequel? What can we expect to come from Avatar: The Way of Water? Well, the synopsis goes as follows. Jake Sully and Neytiri, I would not have remembered those names if you had put a gun to my head, have formed a family and are doing everything to stay together. However, they must leave their home and explore the regions of Pandora. When an ancient threat resurfaces, Jake must fight a difficult war against the humans. Right, that sounded really different than the first one, which also featured a battle to save Pandora. Against humans, of course. They're also boasting improved CGI, saying it's gonna look even better than the one in 2009, and honestly, I'm not really sure I'm buying it. I've seen enough trailers, and looking at it, it honestly feels less like cinema, less like a movie, and more like a video game being developed in something like Unreal Engine. There's some kind of uncanny valley, unrealistic quality about it that's sort of just turning me off to the movie. It also sort of begs the question, how much better can the CGI really be? Because admittedly, it was brilliant in 2009, and we're used to really, really good CGI, considering Marvel has basically been putting out blockbuster after blockbuster of basically mostly CGI films for years. I'm starting to feel a little bit like what I feel about new iPhones. Like, how much better is it possibly gonna get? What other features are you giving me? And that's kind of how I feel about Avatar: The Way of Water. I saw the first Avatar, great, the effects were groundbreaking, blue cat people, blah blah blah. How much better could this one be? And 13 years later, am I really all that invested? But that's just me. Being completely honest, I don't think selling a movie based on groundbreaking visual effects can work in 2022, especially when you consider just how much cash this film has got to rake in to be considered a win. Apparently, James Cameron himself actually told Disney execs that to break even, this movie is gonna have to make over $2 billion. Yeah, billion with a B. If you ask me, that's gonna be tough. The pandemic wasn't kind to movie theaters, and it seems like living in a post-pandemic world, if you can call it that, the interest of going to the movies has really waned and never bounced back completely. I speak partially from personal experience. I end up at a lot of empty showings. Even 7 o'clock or midnight Thursday releases are way more empty than they used to be. But I want to provide an example with Disney's latest Marvel release. On its opening weekend in 2018, Marvel's Black Panther raked in a whopping $202 million, and it went on to gross $1.4 billion worldwide. Its sequel, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, brought in $181 million during its opening weekend. And 5 weekends later, its domestic gross is currently at about $409 million. Now, I will admit that it is still in theaters, so I can't exactly form a completely fair, close comparison here. But when you look at the fact that Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is only the third film to break $400 million in the domestic box office this year, and you lean over into the pit that is ticket sales and take a long look down, things aren't exactly looking promising for a theatrical release for Avatar: The Way of Water. And there's so much riding on this film's success. They actually already have Avatar 3 in the can because they filmed it at the exact same time as they shot The Way of Water. And because James Cameron seems hell-bent on beating this blue cat-eared horse to death, he's actually got plans and scripts for another 2 Avatar movies if these 2 perform well. I get it, the first one had great visual effects, and people are still willing to wait 3 hours in line at Walt Disney's Animal Kingdom in order to ride some of the most boring rides in the world just because they have lights and blue cat people in them. But I'm sort of doubtful that many of us are gonna be on board for a Pandoran cinematic universe, or whatever you might want to call it. That being said, I think it's this kind of controversy and these kinds of questions, this kind of debate, that are really gonna drive ticket sales. After all, while some people think this is gonna be another cinematic masterpiece, and some people argue that it's gonna be another bloated CGI fest, we're still all gonna go sit through it and just see what it's like, right? So I guess we'll see what it's like. I don't have any particular interest in seeing this film bomb. It's over 3 hours long and I'm gonna have to sit through it to review it, so I'd love for it to be really good. I'm also not really rooting for it to be awesome because, well, I don't have stock in Disney or anything like that. If I did, I wouldn't be making YouTube videos for a living, so whatever happens, happens, but I'll be here to give my review. And that's all from me. I've been Snarky J. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on Avatar: The Way of Water in the comments below.